everyone, my name is Melissa Paul. I'm a student at St. Lawrence College. I'm currently studying sustainable local food. I'm going to talk to you today about human scale food production and how sustainable local food businesses and cooperatives are revolutionizing the food industry here in Canada. Our current export-based model of agriculture production needs urgent innovation and attention. Many experts and scholars suggest we need an absolute paradigm shift into sustainable systems in order to meet the massive demands of our growing population. I think that this is an accurate approach and solution given the current state of our food systems. Now, this change is not going to happen overnight. The government's not going to reform itself, but there are a wide variety of organizations, enterprises, businesses, cooperatives, initiatives, programs, and opportunities for this change to happen. And everyday people like me and you are making this change happen, and we're doing it from the bottom up. Let's first talk a little bit about the symptoms of industrialized food systems. Across the nation, we're seeing a rising health crisis. Diet-related illnesses, ailments, diseases, and disorders are prevalent across the country, and they are concentrated in northern, remote, and indigenous communities. Lack of education and involvement leads us to be blind consumers. Through our linear and extensive farming, we're recognizing the severity of the environmental pollution and damage that we're causing. A lot of it is irreversible. We're using our natural resources faster than the earth can replenish naturally. It's like we're working in overdraft. Since the middle of the 20th century, with advances in technology, biotechnology, revolutions, and innovations to farming equipment, the agriculture system has simply been industrialized, as has the rest of the world. A lot of people don't realize or know that we're clear-cutting our biodiverse rainforests for large-scale livestock production. Consolidation of the markets and our operations gives us an illusion of choice. Our food lays in the hands of multinational billionaire corporations, and they are squeezing out our family farms. We're being replaced with factory farms. Just a little example about how policies are sensitive to large-scale operations. Let's talk a little bit about supply management in Ontario. Now, supply management was created to protect farmers from international trade agreements, to give them fair wages. This was developed as a good thing, but it doesn't seem like it when the gap is so large. I'll show you. In Ontario, you can have a maximum 300 broiler chickens to be exempt from the quota, or the next minimum quota is 90,000 birds for $1.75 million. 390,000. This gap is large. No wonder we're squeezing out the middle scale farmers, the niche, this specialty, and the alternative markets. Some people suggest that we need #more flocking options. We're putting a lot of pressure on our farmers. In fact, the farming industry has the highest rate of suicides compared to any other profession in Canada. Less than 2% of us is feeding the other 98%. And as shown, the government is partial to the large-scale production. But Mother Earth, Mother Nature, is reacting to our methods. We're seeing super weeds develop because of our extensive use of synthetic pesticides, insecticides, herbicides, and fungicides. No amount of genetically modified organisms, GMOs, or genetically engineered crops, GE crops, are going to be able to compete with millions and millions of years of experience. In fact, the use of GMOs and GE crops remain a highly controversial topic, not only to our nation, but around the world. Austria, Greece, Germany, Hungary, Luxembourg, Bulgaria are all examples of countries that have already banned the use and sale of genetically engineered corn because they're worried about its long-term health effects. I think we have a little bit more to worry about because Monsanto is a monopoly. This consolidation of the markets is not just happening with our processed foods and our fast foods. It's happening at a molecular level. It's happening with our seeds. Now, Monsanto has a patent on their seeds. They have a patent on the DNA in the seeds, on the living organism. They've genetically engineered seeds to be sterile the next year so that you have to rebuy those seeds the following year. Because they own the rights to the DNA, if it were to, let's say, cross-pollinate, which happens, into your property, do they own that property? Do they own the animal that ate that seed because it has the DNA? These are all questions that really need urgent attention because right now, 90% of the world's soybeans are owned by this company, this chemical agribusiness company. We need to bring the control back, and we're doing that at local levels. Let's get to the bottom line. Around the world, agriculture takes up about 50% of the world's habitable land, uses around 70% of the world's accessible fresh water, and accounts for about 14% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. We must find more sustainable, viable approaches to our food production. So, let's talk about sustainability. How do we get there? What is it? In a nutshell, it's often referred to as the triple bottom line: people, planet, profits, balancing environment, social, and economic pursuits. Creating a system that's not only efficient, but preserves or enhances the environment, biodiversity, and the ecosystems. It's socially responsible. It's not all about the production. It's also about working conditions, the ethical treatment of animals, fair prices, fair wages, fair trade. And of course, this is a business model. We want to see cost savings. We want to see profits. We want to see appropriate use of natural resources. Let's take a step back for a second. Now, in indigenous cultures, land, water, animals, medicines are sacred and they're freely gifted. They're not natural resources. In fact, they're just sources of life that are respected. Sustainability, this is not a new idea. This is not a new approach. It's an understanding that has sustained Anishinaabe peoples for thousands of years, generation after generation after generation. Our mentality and our actions have drastically changed with colonization, industrialization, the mechanization, and loss of culture, loss of involvement. We're all in this together. So how do we create these systems? How do we create a viable way to feed the growing world? Because by 2050, there's supposed to be about 9 billion mouths to feed. This means about 80% of us are going to be living in cities. We have to bring food production to the cities. We have to make food as close as possible to the consumer. The average cost of groceries for an Inuit family, or a family in Nunavut, of 4, is about $19,780 a year. The average adult makes around $20,000 a year. Not only do we need policies that create living wages that reflect the cost of living, that's a whole other TED Talks, but we need to bring control locally. We need to fund local processing facilities. We need to create local infrastructure. This will cut the cost of transportation to these remote areas or to areas that have a hard time accessing safe, nutritional, organic produce and food. We need to create self-sufficient economies that empower instead of creating dependency, relying on importation, relying on other people to grow the food, relying on other people just in general for their food production. I think we're all familiar with the quote, "Give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. Teach a man to fish, he'll eat for a lifetime." I think we have enough tools in education to share this knowledge with each other, and I think we need to teach every aspect of food, every spectrum, from seed to preservation. The Canada's Food Guide is a great guide to teach about nutrition. It was adapted in 2007 for First Nations, for Inuit, for Métis peoples. I think cultural appropriateness is very important when we're talking about food literacy, but right now there are no correlated federal policies on. But right now in Canada there is no national school food program. In fact, we're the only G7 country without one. We also lack a national food policy. And that's what Resetting the Table is. It's a collaborative of grassroots organizations in its response to our food system issues. It's a call to action for a national school food program. They focus first and foremost on food sovereignty, ensuring that food is eaten as close to as possible as where it was produced, creating nationally funded children and food prevention strategies and nutrition strategies like school meal programs, breakfast clubs, school gardens, food literacy, ensuring that the public be actively involved in the food decisions. So they're doing this and they're passionate. Over 3,500 Canadians have been involved with this active tool because we want to create food secure communities that have food sovereignty, and they're doing it in sustainable ways. So let's talk about sustainability and sustainable practices in business models. Cooperatives. Cooperatives are absolutely amazing. They were created in response to the monopolies happening with the government and the train systems, mostly in the grain sector. This is where it started. They developed their membership base now, so they have distribution, so it's making sure that organic food is available to everyone, so they can now drop it off to you. They run with the triple bottom line: people, planet, profit. Democratic, one member, one vote, opposed to corporate, where you could have 10,000 investments and you could have 10,000 votes. There are over 9,000 co-ops in Canada with over 18 million members. In Calgary, it's a $1 investment in their co-op, and that's an investment for life. You get to vote where you want to see the business grow, what kind of products you want to see on the shelves, etc., etc., etc. When we're talking about directly marketing to the consumer or directly getting that produce available, let's talk about community-supported agriculture. Essentially, this is just an advance payment to your farmer for that season's worth of produce. Pay X amount of dollars and you get 20, 30 weeks of food, depends on where you live. And you know what, you're building a relationship. You understand where your food comes from. You shake hands from the person who makes it. This is human scale food production. This is just reuniting with our food systems again. 1 week, you know what, I don't really like mushrooms. Can I get a little extra spinach in there? Oh, you know what, this week is a holiday. I get a lot of family coming over. Can I have some more peppers? Can I have some more of this or that? You know what, your farmer will probably be like, you know what, sure, if it's available, yeah, let's do that, no problem. Let's talk, okay, those are a few business models. Let's talk about production methods. Hydroponics. We have more mouths to feed and we have less land. So hydroponics, you don't need to use soil. You're growing in gravel, sand, nutrient-filled liquid. Aquaponics, you add aquatic animals into the equation. Their excrement feeds the soil and the plants grown hydroponically in turn purify the water. Let's talk about a really cool business model in Montreal. Lufa Farms, they got a hydroponic greenhouse on a rooftop. We're bringing the food to the cities. On a rooftop, yes, because we're capturing the thermal energy through window curtains at night. In fact, they're getting more energy through thermal energy than they do with the sun in the greenhouse during the daytime. That's kind of cool. So biological pest management, no need for synthetic chemicals. Nice, fresh produce delivered that day. Cutting out the transportation, cutting out the refrigeration because they use CSAs. They're creating community involvement because people are exchanging recipes, they're exchanging vegetables when they're at these food drop-off locations. And as if there's nothing to waste in nature, there's nothing to waste here. Anything that doesn't get sold, they drop off to where it's needed. Food banks, shelters, etc. Again, more mouths to feed, less land. Can't grow out, we're growing up. Vertical agriculture is the way of the future, if you ask me. In Vancouver, they've built North America's first verticrop farm on a rooftop downtown Vancouver. So they have CSAs, you can go, you can pick up fresh from the farm, or you can eat it at a local restaurant. Culinary tourism, folks, when you go out, try the local cuisine. Try the local cuisine. So, by this type of methods, you can actually produce at 10 tons productivity 4 times faster. Non-for-profits are the heart and soul of food revolution. One example is The Stop in Toronto. They got after-school food programs. They're teaching children, adolescents, and adults about food literacy. They're getting them involved with their food through their different programs like drop-in programs, community cooking, community advocacy, sustainable food production, and they also have community meals as well, and a lot more than that. I was able to be involved in my community food center, the local community food center. They have a greenhouse, they also have an aquaponic system. And essentially I learned how to grow the food. We harvested the food and then we ate the food. So they taught us local seasonal recipes to use. This was so cool. And you know how much it cost me? Nothing. And they even accommodated for my baby. I asked them in advance because this is a 12-week program. Is it okay if I bring my son? He's not even 1 yet. He just turned 1 now, actually. But they let me bring my playpen. They even had a high chair. You have no idea. Okay, maybe you do. Mothers, fathers. How much that meant to me. That community involvement and how accommodating they were. So, again, reaching all ages. They have seniors programs. They got yoga classes. They have garden programs, community kitchens, all these different types of hands-on learning experiences for little or no cost to the public. There are a plethora of solutions and a plethora of Canadian community responses to these food system issues and symptoms that I was talking about. People are just trying to eat in season, trying to eat closer to home, buying from your local butcher, buying from your farmers markets, your slow food markets. Write to your MP, write to your school, propose a school garden, or even for your child's school, your neighbor. Vertical agriculture, hydroponics, aquaponics, innovative techniques, traditional medicines, traditional foods, learning how to preserve and freeze and dry your own herbs, veggies, fruits, and meats. These are all revolutions on their own. Never underestimate the power of your small decisions. They can have a rippling effect on the economy in a positive way. And never underestimate the power of a small group of determined citizens to change the world. In fact, it's the only thing that ever has. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope to see you at the